I hate when he goes like that. He all of a sudden goes dead. I guess we're on live now. So, hey, everybody. Dan DeGrice here, coming from Rockford, Illinois, where I work and live in Chicago, here with my co host, Rob Fisher. Don't know if I identified the fact that was it last time or since last time, Rob, that you got promoted to battalion chief?
Oh wow, man, that hurts. I've been in battalion now. I think this is year 3.
What?
What? Yes,
Wh-
yes, yes.
Where? Why aren't you wearing the helmet?
I can put a helmet on if you want me to. I mean, but I am at home in Seattle, so I don't bring my gear home. But
Well,
let's just. I totally get the fact that your memory is slipping. You
yeah,
retired. You're getting old. You think you're in your office, or at least it looks like you're in your office. So it's good to be
yeah.
back on with you,
I,
Danny.
I have things in the back here, yeah, that have my name on it, so I know I'm in my office. I don't think I have dementia yet, but maybe hopefully our guest can help with the things that we were talking about in regards to work-life balance, self-care, and maybe my kind of pseudo dementia. Um, so something that so welcome everybody. Thanks for being with us, whether or not you're here live or in Memorex, if anybody remembers Memorex in the sense of watching it on tape. But today we have a special guest, Donnie Hutchinson. Um, he is a university professor, researcher, speaker, and he basically talks about work-life balance. And I kind of want to set the stage for this: is that if you've taken a peer support class, if you've gone to a fire service conference, if you've taken a behavioral health class, or going to any type of training, you'll hear the word self-care and you'll hear the word work life balance. And I'll be honest with you, if you would have said that to me 30 years ago, I'd have been like, really not interested. It's kind of like active listening when we're learning about peer support. I don't know how to listen unless you ask my wife. She knows that I hear, but I don't always listen. And what does that mean in regards to self care? And I mean, self care, when I think about it, I think of grooming. And because I don't have a whole lot of hair left, I don't have to do a whole lot of grooming, but I'm working on this stuff here. And if you know me and Rob, we have to keep a little levity here. And really, that's part of work life balance and self care too. Levity and flexibility with your mind and your thought process and all the things that we experience in our career is one thing. And then what about our life, right? From growing up to whether it be being bullied, living in an alcoholic family, dealing with sisters and brothers, personalities, all the clowns in the fire service, uh, debt, finances, mental health issues, substance abuse issues, and I could go on. And that's why it's important that we have Donnie on today to really, from his perspective, and anybody that knows me, that when I've had a class or training, we talk about it, and I use levity as some balance in the given day at the moment because there's plans for short term and long term, and there's also right now. What do you do? What are you doing right now for balance in your life? And hopefully, it's kind of joining us and having a discussion with myself, Rob, and Donnie to understand what that looks like. What's a recommended uh, process and what works for you? So, what works for me might not work for Rob, and same thing for Donnie. So, before I introduce Donnie, Rob, you want to say a few words?
Yeah, well, first of all, welcome everybody, and it's good to be back on, and hopefully everybody had a good holidays because I think our last show was sometime before the holidays. But I like this topic, I really do, and I think as Dan was kind of talking about the importance of this balance. I mean, when you think about it, firefighters are a unique group of individuals. Most of us, I should say, not everybody is into the job the way that some of us are. Most of us, especially in the group that I hang out with the fools, they consider it a calling. But when you really think about everything, our purpose in life is life itself. And while we might consider firefighting our career, really we are working a job to take care of ourselves, our family, and to live a good life. So it's extremely important that we figure out a way to balance the fun, the calling, if you will, of the fire service with what we should be doing, and that is taking care of ourselves and our family and living a long life as long as we can. So I'm excited to hear from Donnie, and he's been quietly sitting in the corner up there, just nodding his head as we're talking. So I will cut it short so that we can get to letting Donnie talk about himself a little bit, and so we can get on.
So yeah, for a proper introduction, as I mentioned earlier, Donnie is a university professor, researcher, and speaks on work-life balance. And I don't know exactly in the last year or longer that you've kind of focused on work-life balance for first responders to help them achieve a greater effectiveness at work and at home. And when I think of home, I'm not just talking. I'm thinking about productivity. I'm thinking about relationship with others, spouse, and family. Um, what does that look like for you in the last couple of years and what you've been doing, Donnie? And first, welcome.
Well, thank you very much, and I appreciate you having me on. And welcome everyone that's watching, and both of you really talking about the meat of what I discuss with people, and I use it in terms of I ask firefighters, are your day-to-day behaviors in alignment with your priorities in life? Our priorities shift all the time, as whether you're a firefighter, another type of first responder, or professor, like me. And priorities, they change. They go, they ebb and flow. But essentially, though, I think we end up feeling sort of a fulfilled life if we actually think about our day-to-day behaviors in alignment with that. But yeah. Mentioned I was a university professor. I've been doing that for 5 years. I teach in the MBA school leadership classes at the University of Dayton. And my PhD research was on work-life balance and self-care, and that's what drove me into this field of learning and understanding. Hey, people out there that actually take better care of themselves, and we can get into self-care a little bit more in depth, but people that really take better care of themselves seem to have a pretty balanced life. And so I researched that and I studied it, and that's what I did discover is that um, it just makes a lot of sense, as you guys both talked about, that, hey, we have a life to live, and are we living it to the way we really want? Part of that is a career, and I love the word calling. Um, I definitely feel like I have a calling with this work-life balance and self-care, and a calling to assist and help first responders, firefighters, to gather that, to really understand what their priorities in life are and choose what they are, and then just help them achieve that. I've been enjoying it. Been doing this now for about actually 4 years with firefighters in a big conference setting, if you will. So it's um, been very enjoyable, and I look forward to keep learning more and doing some more studies, and actually doing a study, trying to figure out what study to do specifically on firefighters and work-life balance. So anyone out there, I'm open for suggestions on that, and love your guys' input on that as well.
Yeah, thanks, Donnie. So this will kind of lead into this next question. I'm curious what you were doing before you got involved in this, your calling of doing this, and and maybe that will lead to my question is like, you know, what got you doing this? What was when you were working on your when you were working on your PhD? What was it that just kind of hit you in the face and said, "Hey, this is what you should be doing and why?" And then what linked you to the fire service? I mean, we're an easy group to pick on because we've got a lot of problems sometimes. So I'm assuming that might be the case, but
Yes. Well, where I started in this is that I started in a career in a professional sales organization, Xerox, actually. But I recognized that as a young person in a career that hanging out all night in the bars, drinking beers with single guys like me at the time. When you're in your 40s and 50s and you have children at home and a spouse at home, and you do that 4 or 5 nights a week during the work week, that's probably not going to lead to success down the road. And sure enough, it didn't. And so I went through a professional part of my life just always trying to live a balanced life. I wrote a book called Lead with Balance a few years ago that had 4 pillars in it: faith, family, career, and health. And that's how I viewed my life and my career was I need to balance that. And then I went into the human resource and organizational development fields, got into the consulting world, and been president of various organizations, companies, different parts of the country. Spent a career doing a little bit of that. But I always tried to fulfill that, sort of walk the talk. I wanted to live a balanced life. And it's interesting. In part of my career, people would say, well, that's easy for you being the president to live a balanced life. You can do what you want of the organization, right? It's like, hey, I'm going to make it to my kids' football game, my girls' cheer game or gymnastics at the time. But the thing was that I said, yes, I am going to do that, but I expect everyone in the organization to do it as well. And I'd instruct my direct reports to make sure that they were home, where they made it possible to get to the important items in life, whatever they deem to be important, and then to do the same for their staff. So I created a sort of a career path doing that, and worked through various companies doing that, and then went out, started doing consulting on my own, doing leadership consulting when I started teaching about 5 years ago with University of Dayton, and spent about 5 or so years doing the consulting. And then this year in 2020, I'm strictly focused on educating all of you in the firefighting, as well as some medically related industries, first responder related industries, is where I sort of have that passion for. And you mentioned how did I get into it? It was I got lucky. That's all there is. I was Matt Vincey, of the educational director for the IAFF down in Washington, D.C., contacted me fall of 2016 and said, hey, we have a lot of interest from our members to learn about work-life balance. And we saw what you were doing based upon my LinkedIn profile, believe it or not. And called me up and asked for an interview, and asked me, hey, what would be your approach of putting together an educational piece for our members? And I shared with them, I took all my consulting practices that I've been doing from my professional work, and I said, it's pretty simple. I get people to understand what the current reality is with work-life balance. What are your relationships like at work, at home, with your spouse, with your children, with yourself? How are your relationships with your self-care, your diet, your exercise, your sleep? As you guys know, sleep doesn't work out for you guys. But your mental health, right? And your social, spiritual health and all that. And I said, I get people to understand that current reality as into here's where you're at. And then I take them over to another side and say, hey, what would you desire life to be like? You can be the architect of your life. How do you desire things to be in all those different facets? And then I help them build a plan, a tactical plan. We got to put some meat to this. And when they leave the seminar, they're going to leave with action items on how to get to that desired future. He loved the idea, and I just came back last week from doing the ALTS annual conference training for 4 years in a row now. And from that, then people that attended, that have attended that over the years, they invited me back to their locals and state associations and so forth to do training for them and get the word out to more members. And that's the passion right there. I want to be a big part of and or at least a piece of this concept of changing your culture a little bit, right? Of We all understand the cardiovascular disease risk. We understand the cancer risks. We understand the mental health risks. And so now it's about, hey, can we actually, as you guys sort of mentioned, you take you take that oath, right, to take care of, you promise to serve and protect your communities, right? But a lot of times sometimes we fail to understand that, we and our families are a part of that community. And I think, though, we're starting to understand that we have to take care of ourselves, because we don't want to hit retirement. And what's the average age of people out of once they hit retirement? That, is it 5 years? It's
Well,
not
let's ask somebody that's close or is in retirement.
yeah, it's not a great statistic, right? And Dan, we want you to beat the odds, right?
Well, I'll just say before Danny jumps in, welcome to the Fire family, and thank you for what you're doing for us. So,
thank you very much.
You had mentioned, Donnie, that you've been working with fire service personnel for the last 4 years, and I'm like, you haven't given up yet? We have a tendency to grow on people, good and bad. And once you get indoctrinated, which I'm sure you were on a webcast a couple months ago, and kind of like here too, is you notice from our conversation before this and during, you'll see, and going forward at any trainings you do, is that we have a tendency to poke at people and create a sense of levity. That's what in what we have learned in the fire service is that we have used dark humor to manage the stressors that we see and that we experience. That always doesn't go over very well at home. And unfortunately, I'm assuming Rob, like myself and many others, have learned that what we say at the firehouse doesn't always relate to a good relationship at home with our spouses. And we have to be careful at what happens. But then on the other side of it too is that we have a tendency then to keep a lot of that stuff away from our family and our significant others, which then creates distance. So, and I just wanted to clarify. So, I'm assuming the person from the IFF was it Pat Morrison that you were talking with over the years?
No, it was Matt Vincey.
Oh, okay, all right.
Educational director.
Gotcha. And what we've learned, and I've been a part of the IFF Labor EAP committee, and now the Behavioral Health Committee for the last 19 years. And what we have done over the years is surround ourselves with quality people that know a lot about what we need to know in regards to behavioral health, mental health, health and wellness, coping, work-life balance. You had mentioned about life expectancy. So back in 2010, I did a study really to look at suicide in the fire service. It was actually published in a rival magazine. It's no longer. I should have gave it to Bobby, but it was in Fire Chief magazine. But what I also, rather than get into the suicide aspect of it, what I also looked at is longevity, and found that in 2000, so we looked at 8,000 members, and we looked at all the deaths in Chicago for the Chicago Fire Department, not all of Chicagoland and the surrounding departments, but the average life expectancy, our mandatory retirement is 63. Most people back then in the 90s and 2000s stayed on until 60 to 63, but it was 4 years. That was the average life expectancy, 67, back in 1990 to 2000. And then it got better the next 10 years or decade up to 2010. It was 11 years, but still 11 years. I mean, we do 30, 35, and you hear some people do 40 years in the fire service. And then you're only going to get 4 to 11 years on average. And then the question is what is the quality of that life? We could get into how we ate. We could get into, no masks. We could talk about the hazards. I believe a lot of it has to do with internal stress and how we do or don't manage that. Um, I'm going to start looking at now the next decade and see what that is. But with all that said, there's a lot of things that pull at our work life balance. And you could, I want to kind of look at both ends of it. If you could share with us, what's the most difficult thing that you have been faced with dealing with people in the fire service? And what's your greatest accomplishment?
So within the fire service, you guys, you have a servant's heart and you want to fix every single problem. That's what I've recognized. And that, and it's, you keep yourselves extremely busy. Committees, projects, volunteer. Someone needs something, you're there for them. You're not really good at saying no. Would that be fair to say? But one of the,
I don't know if we lost Donnie. Oh, are you there, Don?
yes, I am.
Okay, lost you there for a second.
The sad part is that a lot of times it's the sacrificing of yourself. You know, you're giving up, because every time we don't say no to something, we're actually usually saying no to ourselves. It could be the sleep, it could be any of our needs at all, that we have. So, I mean, it's always a challenge, and I think the sleep challenge that everybody, the departments have all across the country, right? I mean, they have the sleep challenge, and I think that's one of the most difficult things when it comes to self care, is to get our arms around and try to figure out how to do better at that, given the shifts and everything. Um, I mean, the greatest accomplishment within the fire service, or is that where you're headed with that one? Is there's a lot of them. I mean, I think it's getting the feedback after I give a training session, and then one that stuck out that I received just the other day from last week down in Orlando. I talked about the difficulty in saying no to everything that you have going on, and all the busyness and everything like that. And I mentioned, I said, but you have to remember, when you say yes to something, you are actually saying no to something else. You may not realize what you're saying no to, but you are. Now, so is that no to, I'm not going to make it home as I promised? Is it saying no to, I'm not going to do something with my child that I promised you? It's no to something. Maybe it's no to exercise. Okay, I can jump in that meeting, and there goes your workout. Yeah. So what I try to do is get the members, and this one particular member, it really hit home, is that when I said, just remember, when you say yes, try to figure out what you're saying no to, because of course we only have 24 hours in the day, and we try to stretch out as much as we can, but we have to be careful. Going back to that self-care piece, we need to. Yeah, I like to identify or put a picture together for self-care. It's like taking an empty cup, right? You can't pour from an empty cup. You have to fill your cup first. And that's where that self-care piece comes into it. Is how do we rejuvenate ourselves? Not just through sleep, but through the relaxation, rejuvenate our mind. And I really I think one of the greatest accomplishments is my education that I try to do on a concept called spillover. What we do in one role in life, either positively or negatively, can spill over into another role. I think, Dan, you mentioned about how the attitudes or the behaviors we need on a fire scene are generally exactly what's needed at the fire scene, but is it needed in the home? And as you mentioned, it sometimes doesn't work very well, right? So we have to be, it spills over, it negatively spills over into the home. So what do we do? Well, how do we check ourselves to, okay, taking the hat off, now we have to put the other hat on, which is home life. And consciously shift that thought process, right? To, okay, I have to be more patient now, more open-minded. I have to listen to my spouse tell me the same story 4 times over. Not that I'm busting on my own wife on that. But as she knows, I'll say, honey, you told me that now 4 times, and I have to catch myself all the time thinking she needs to talk it out. Sometimes that gets us non-firefighters in trouble too.
Yeah, I'll say that my wife, I can't, I got to be really careful when I say, yeah, you told me that this morning, because that's not a good recipe for success. So I bear with the fact that I'm going to listen again, and I work hard. I work hard at trying to be more of an active listener to my wife, and she puts up with a lot of stuff. As we were talking before we started the show, Donnie, that I get a little busy, and but when you were talking about the when you say yes to something, that means you're saying no to something else. And I think when we first started talking in this show, at the first part, you were talking about priorities, and that's where our priorities start to align or get disaligned, and start coming out of, and when we start losing. So when we start saying yes a lot, um, especially early on in your career, you're trying to, or in the fire service, because not everybody is a career firefighter, but you wanting to establish yourself within this great profession, and so you're saying yes a lot, which means you're saying no a lot to a lot of different things. So you're having to deal with rebalancing or trying to adjust your priorities. It seems like the older and wiser, like Danny, that you start to look at, you start to be able to step back easier and be able to look at your priorities and make adjustments. So we see younger firefighters gung ho moving, trying to do everything, and then a mid part in your career or in your profession, you kind of have to start looking at, you've made a lot of mistakes, you've learned from your mistakes, and then you get old senior guy like Danny, then you start to pull things back, and you start to um, make the adjustments that are needed, and start rebalancing those priorities. So with that, I'm curious. Maybe you can speak to a little bit of these priorities things, which leads to the question is, what's your vision? You're reaching out to firefighters. We got you on the show. You were on a show a couple months ago. What's your vision for us, or what do you want to do with us?
Hey, Donnie, before you answer that, and I don't want to screw you up, but Rob just can't say what he said about me because it sounded like he gave me a positive and then he shot me down. I mean, come on. I can't just sit here.
You see how wise he is. He saw that and he understands that now. 5 years ago, he would have went, "Oh, okay."
I heard you had 1 foot in the grave, but I don't know where I picked that up from.
Yeah, he hooked me all right. He got me. I didn't blurt it out right away. I waited till he was done. But maybe we could talk about that afterwards and about our work life relationship. Sorry, but
So you're asking about the vision. Is the vision that I have is that when we look at the fire service industry today, and we first let's look at our culture, just the American culture to begin with. We look at overweight and obesity, right? We're upwards of 70% in the America for America, overweight and obese. You look at the fire service. I believe I was at the Health and Wellness Conference a couple months ago, and one of the popular speakers mentioned in the fire service. I heard the number 80%. Does that sound like an accurate figure? So when we look, And when we look at that, you think, and we know, with the sciences behind, we know how that contributes to the cardiovascular problems. We know how that contributes to the cancer problems, right? Now you have many other factors that also contribute to that. It can contribute to the mental health issues as well, right? Of course, you have many other factors that contribute to that. But what my vision is that we collectively, everyone in the fire service, all the consultants, all the speakers, everyone's trying to help, is that we turn this culture around, because you've gone through a period of, just like America has for the past 5 decades, of the term's called behavioral contagion or social contagion. And we've done that with being out of shape. I liked in one of the emails that I got earlier in the week that, hey, this is straight talk. Let's have straight talk. We in America, we're fat and lazy and out of shape and poor health. And you guys pick up what percentage of your pickups on the EMS runs are for preventable diseases, right?
Majority of them.
It's huge. And, we generally, people are looking for a pill to take or something to just magically make it work. But straight talk, we've got to get in and start taking care, put our self-care, our physical needs, our mental needs, social and spiritual needs. We've got to start improving that. And that's my vision for the fire service industry. And that's where I want to help out. And that's what I do. And through an academic basis, research basis, is to learn how can we turn that tide? How can we have the social contagion, which is basically obesity increased, just like the common cold spreads. So what that means is that we spend a period of time of doing things that our peers have been doing. Could be not eating well, not exercising, all the things that, and all of a sudden we just all ballooned up, right? Can we reverse that now? And that's where my vision goes. Let's reverse that. And you're starting to have that, right? I mean, you think about where's peer support today versus what it was 10 years ago, right? How about peer training support, for the physical training? That's starting to catch on, to where you start hanging out and doing things with other like-minded people. All of a sudden, it starts to become contagious, and we start eating better at the table. We start actually exercising, right? And we try to help each other fit in sleep when we can. We encourage each other to hit the peer support. So that's my vision, is to help turn this culture around and understand that we're contagious. So I want to be around people that are doing the right things, and I want to be a person that's doing the right things, so other people are attracted to me, and that over time we can get this whole thing turned around. And the final destination of that vision is, can this really be the industry where leadership is taking control, and literally it turns it around to where, you guys, the job to go into the burning house and search and rescue, one hell of a physical, need there, right? Very, very difficult, and mentally very difficult. So we know that you're training to be sort of that corporate, or I forget the term they use, athlete, right? Where that's what it's going to take. And I see that's where this industry can go. And this industry could actually be a leader of taking something that is very, very bad, called cardiovascular cancer, mental health concerns, issues that are extremely real, and turn that around and flip it upside down and be a flagship for other industries to start to follow. So there you go. That's my vision.
No, and that's good, right?
Let's do it.
Our goal is, right, to take care of other people. And I think what, as you mentioned early, is if you say yes to something, I like that, you're saying kind of, hey, no to something else for the time being, and what effect is that going to have? And if you do that repeatedly, what's the long-term effect on that? And I could tell you that I know that when I came on, and Rob, we kind of have about the same time, even though I don't remember when you got promoted, but I do know now. I don't know the exact date, but my brain thing. Everybody knows my brain. It's been traumatized. So I digress. So when I came on in the '80s, man, everybody was fit. I mean, everybody, football, but basketball, baseball, hockey, soccer, whatever it may be, and it was, very, very physical, people. And then I look at 30 years later, and some of these guys that came on at 150 pounds, or I came on at actually 220, and I'm actually 212 now. But I've had to be intentional about uh, about what I take in. We always say about you are what you eat. You are what you eat. And when I'm stressed out, I eat M&Ms. I become a big giant M&M guy, especially peanut M&Ms. It's like crack cocaine to me, and it feels good when I'm doing it. And then about an hour later, I feel like crap. So what I know for myself is I can't feed into those short um, week times. I have to be intentional, especially now. Yes, Rob, at my age, and I don't think you're too far behind me. I have to be very intentional because my recovery time takes longer. When we were younger, right, and those aches and pains didn't happen very often. Now I do make the wrong turn, and I'm going to be in pain with my back for 2 to 3 weeks. But what I noticed, and we talked about a variety of different things, mental health, right? Substance, maybe really didn't talk about, well, substance use. It doesn't matter if it's drugs or alcohol, it's food. A lot of us self-medicate with food. Um, we need food for survival, but we also use sugar for immediate needs. And for me, and I'm jesting, but I'm actually very serious of the fact that I'm a sugar monger with my coffee, with donuts, um, with anything, tea or whatever it is. I'm putting a lot of sugar in there, and it's like, do I like the taste, or is it my body wanting that? I kind of mentioned to you guys about longevity after retirement, but I also looked at causes of death over those 20 years. And the number one thing was heart disease. The second one was cancer. But for heart disease, 40 to 45% of those people that were dying of heart disease. Some could say that that's natural causes, but they were dying too young. The body wasn't keeping up with what we were doing to ourselves and what we were taking in. Some of the changes that we've seen, I think, that I've seen in the fire station, I think we're eating better. We have routines, or some of us have routines in regards to exercising. Certainly in the busier areas, it's tough to do that when you're running 15 to 25 calls. You just want to rest. A lot of us don't really rest very well and take that time down. Some of us do it really well. Drinking water, and just having, I don't want to get into the psychology of it, but grounding and being flexible in your mind in a sense. Okay, I just had, we're working 24-hour shifts. Some people are working 48. I'm like, holy cow, where do you have that? Where do you have work-life balance in there? So what I want to ask you is something like, if you ever watched the show with, there goes my brain again, Bill Murray and Baby Steps. What are the three things? And there's, not all the things, and you covered some of them. If you were going to talk to one person, a group of people, or an organization, and just like we do in regards to peer support, if somebody looks at how to develop a program, I'm like, hey, it's going to take you 6 months to 2 years, and here's all the steps. But what are the three things that you would say to somebody or someone's or department that you need to start with this?
Okay. It centers around that concept of spillover. It's a big area, and so when we think about, first thing is that I would encourage people to identify the spillover that happens in your lives every single day. And that spillover again is, it's how you mentioned, Dan, about that. You eat the M&Ms, right? Peanut M&Ms. Now it might have been needed. You needed pick up, wasn't needed. Okay. But you know how you feel sort of sluggish a couple hours later, or it's going to.
It was more of a want than a need. But
yeah, I use the example. So we identify things that spill over. So if we can identify spillover and identify all the negative spillovers in our lives, and then importantly identify those positive spillovers. But yeah, like I run. That's where I generally get my exercise, and I'm actually not joking about this. I run more for my mental health than my physical health. I'll go out and do 4 miles. Once in a while, I'll put some music on with no words. I just want something background going on. Other times, I don't put anything on, and I just reconnect, or sometimes I'll work through a problem, or sometimes for me, I'll pray. I'll just think about that, and or think about life, think about what's coming up. But I go out and I spend that time out there, and then when I come back from that, having a home office or teaching, I'm completely relaxed. I have more energy. I can focus better. I'm more creative. So I know what that component does of running. It positively spills over into my work if I need to focus on something, or I have more patience with teenage daughters. It affects me, and my children know it. And actually my wife knows it too. And sometimes they say, "Hey, when was the last time you ran?" Is their nice way of saying, "You're getting on our nerves. Why don't you go exercise?" But that's what I encourage people to do, is figure out. Another one for me is if I eat any size of a lunch, sandwich, I'm out. My afternoon's shot. I'm sluggish. My thoughts aren't quick. I don't focus well. And so I know that I eat a light breakfast, a light lunch, and a decent dinner. But I realize that negative spillover happens to me, and it's like, well, I don't want that. And for everyone, I take them through is that I say, identify spillover in your life. When you leave work, are you leaving work at work to the best that you can, or are you bringing it home? And when it's brought home, it's sometimes not always in a positive manner. But so the first thing, identify spillover. Second thing, understand your negative spillover and how it's affecting your relationships, how it's affecting your personal self. And then try to mitigate, try to stop some of that negative spillover. And then the third thing, of course, is to identify that positive spillover. And what can you do to do more of that? If you know something, wow, this really makes my spouse happy, well, can you do it more often? Right? When he or she calls you and you're at the station, you answer with, "Hey, I'm swamped, I'm stressed. What do you want?" I had a firefighter here in Kettering, Ohio, tell me, he goes, "Hey, one of the things that I try to remember is when my wife calls me for our little son's birthday cake and asks me, 'Hey, what flavor of cake do you think we should do for Johnny?' He's like, that's the most important question in her life right now, and I need to be respectful of it." And how many times have we received those type of phone calls and we're not respectful? I don't know about you guys, but I sure was guilty of that. And it really made me think about we need to put our best foot forward to everyone in our life, right? And give to them. So those are the three things: identify spillover, reduce your negative spillover, and increase your positive spillover.
Yeah,
Yeah, no,
Donnie. Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. I just wanted to say is that um, I wish I could have had a couple of do-overs in my career, kind of like we do in the when we go to golf outings and that we get a mulligan. My wife is 100% German. There's no mulligans, um, but I'm trying to be intentional going forward. And like the straight talk. That's what I did at my keynote 2 years ago. Is that I need to hear that and be reminded of it. She says that to me, but there's that defiance at times that's real. That I'm like, you can't tell me what to do. I'm a grown man. Uh, but I don't always act like that. And what worked before, you talk about coping skills, and one of the things that want to be reminded is, like you say, running. I hate running. Um, I do it. It doesn't clear my mind because I think of how much I suck at it. Uh, yeah, no, that's a reality. So, but what works for me is walking. Um, and being intentional, and I do that with my wife, not alone. I do that with my wife, and just the touch of her hand, that's what helps um, make sure that I don't have spillover, and that either creates conversation or it doesn't, but it creates that connection. So
Yeah, to get to a couple of the points that you were making, Donnie. Yes, the flavor of the cake is extremely important. And I think one of the mistakes that we as firefighters do, and this speaks to the other point you said about separating yourself from your work. I've heard, I used to come home in my uniform, or at least in some of my uniform. And there are firefighters that I know that intentionally get out of their uniform, leave it at work, get dressed into something different. So when they leave the firehouse, they truly are leaving everything behind, or they're trying to leave everything behind. And as I get older, I'm starting to see that more often, or I'm starting to see that the importance of that. But I think one of the problems with the cake issue, because this is my wife and I to a T. She will ask me a question, whatever it is, and I, being into leadership and reading a lot of leadership books and understanding the structure of the fire service, I like to decentralize command. And so I'll defer that down to the lowest level. And she says, hey, what flavor of the cake do you want for? And I'm like, yeah, I don't mind. Meaning that I don't have a dog in the fight. So, whatever, you can make it strawberry, you can make it whatever. But I'm going to give that to you and let you have that decision. The mistake I'm making is that that's not work, and that I'm missing the opportunity. Which my other point would be is that relationships are so important these days, and I'm missing the opportunity to have that moment relationship with my wife, and to say, I want chocolate, and knowing that she's going to say, well, I want vanilla. Okay, well then we'll do vanilla. It doesn't really matter, but it's the moment that builds the relationship. And then to the point that we were talking about, um, the fire service has changed. This right here, this is screwing up the fire service. This is screwing up America, and I think, going back to the relationships, our issue is our relationships are made here. Our relationships are no longer made individually, and I think we struggle with that, and why we have distractions at the dinner table, why we have distractions at work or at home. We're just so connected and establishing these fake relationships, for lack of a better term, and we're losing out on the connection of the relationship that we should be having. Be it it's the wife, it's the kids, it's the your best friends, all of that stuff. So, with that being said, then, what does work-life balance look like for a firefighter? We talked about your three things. So, if with given all of this, how do I condense it down? I know we're getting towards the end, and I'm sure our firefighters are listening and going, get to, how do I do this?
Yeah. Well, I think it's important. One thing is that when you try to make changes and things like that, is that I try to encourage people to say, we all have regrets. You talk about the mulligans, Dan, and I have regrets, and the idea is to say, how do we move forward with no new regrets? And with that, but what does work-life balance look like for a firefighter? I think it looks very similar as it does for everyone else, because we're all human. We want a rewarding career, right? We want to feel fulfilled in our career. We want to help people. We want a rewarding relationship, whether that's with a spouse or best friends, whatever it might be. But if you have a spouse, you want a happy marriage. Who doesn't want a happy marriage, right? But so a happy marriage would be work-life balance. You want great relationships with your children if you have children. I think that's part of that work-life balance. And then you want to be healthy yourself, physically, mentally, socially healthy, spiritually healthy, whatever spiritual means to you, right? So if you look at that, if you look at all the relationships that you have in life, and especially the ones that are most important, it's generally it's around that spouse and children are generally at the top of the list, right? Is that, are we prioritizing them in our lives, or are we going to wait until retirement to do so? And then when you wait till retirement to do so, as you know, divorce rate extremely high in the fire service, as well as not in the fire service. I personally went through a divorce 8 years ago, 9 years ago or so, whatever it was, right? And remarried about 3 years later. So it's like we all go through things, but how do we want balance? We want to be happy. We want to be fulfilled. That's what I believe work-life balance is, and I believe that's what the research says it is. But what are you guys thinking about that? You want to be successful at work, but we also want to be successful at home, right? We don't want the price to get too high. At what level you want to rise to in the fire service industry? What are you willing to sacrifice your marriage? Are you willing to sacrifice your health? Are you willing to sacrifice your children and not have a relationship with them? Is that success? So I guess part of it is how do we wish to define success? And everybody needs to do that on their own. But we can learn from others, and we can learn from studies, and the studies of older people, when they look back on life, we all know what they say: relationships, relationships, relationships. And I wish I'd have taken better care of myself. Right?
That, one of the things that gets mentioned about you can't take your finances or your wealth to the grave with you. And I think for us, and Americans, my wife and I, we travel a lot, and we travel to Europe, and so we see a different lifestyle. And I have relatives that are in Italy, so it's a different lifestyle over there than it is here. But it seems like Americans are always looking for the materialistic item. They're looking to compete with the neighbors and everybody else. And so we have this battle of trying to make as much money as you possibly can. And I mean, I enjoy what I do as a battalion, and I get paid really well to do what I do. But and I know, somebody will probably throw a zinger to me, but I probably do my job for less than what I'm getting paid for now. And that money is not my priority. It's my, again, going back to the calling, it's what I love to do. It's like anything else. If you really love playing lacrosse, or you love boating, or whatever it is, I just happen to have a profession that is a really good hobby and I love to do. So I think separating, our success has to be something that you really love doing. And there are people in this world, majority of them, I guess you could say, that work a career that they absolutely hate. And all they're doing is they're just making money to do other things that they love. So maybe somebody like a firefighter that really is into their job, that line can get blurred really easily. And so that you really struggle with the priorities because it is the something that you really love, and you get paid doing it. So yeah, I see what you're saying, and I know I've made mistakes over my life with the kid and with my wife, but now the kid doesn't matter anymore because I got a granddaughter. She's number one. So
You kind of mentioned, Donnie, is that about relationships. And so I ran our union, the Chicago Firefighters Union EAP program for 14 years, and I kept the statistics on that. Obviously I've thrown a number of numbers at people, and I always say liars figure and figures lie. But when I looked at it and totaled them, they're very similar to the same statistics that actually Frank Lito, a friend of mine for the FDNY Counseling Center, had, is that the number one reason people contacted us by far was marital and relationships. And you mentioned about divorce, is that, yeah, I mean, I remember being at one firehouse that had an engine, a truck, and an ambulance. So 12 people there, and a chief, so 13. And of those 13, 12 were divorced or going through a divorce. That's not always the same thing throughout the fire department. And actually, there's some studies out there that show, because of our team approach and the firehouse family, that it's a supportive network towards working things out with others and with our significant others. But with that said, when we talk about divorce, we talk about divorcing a significant other. I wonder how many people, and this might be provocative to people in a sense, is how many of us would or have divorced ourselves in a sense of the whole work-life balance. And like I said, I kid, but it's truly, man, I wish I had a couple of do-overs and a couple of mulligans in my career, not only from a firefighting standpoint, but from a relational standpoint. And it's not easy, and that's why it's cool to have this conversation with you. But I'm 3 months removed, retired, and granted, I've had some training and education in regards to self-care and work-life balance. But this should be a stalwart, a staple from the very beginning. When I think about the fire service, is the way we were trained is if we weren't doing something, we were useless. And that's not for a long term. I mean, that was my father. My father worked 2 jobs. He was a cop, and he worked nights. Very seldom would I see him. And then so that was my pattern too. And many of the men and women that I talk to work either a ton of overtime or work a second job that is in the same career, fire service. So where is that break? When do you get that break? One thing I think that has worked for me over the years, just by happenstance and by accident, is the fact that I had a full-time career in the fire service, but I also had a full-time career in another career, behavioral health, mental health. So I got that break. And I kind of talked to my wife about that. And I go, hey, I'm lucky. I never, I remember most people. So with that kind of got me away from the physical stuff and more of the mental stuff. And it gave my body a break and my mind, flexibility as well. I know we're coming to the end here, and I guess what I would want to say is number one, thanks for being with us and sharing that information. So where can people find Donnie Hutchinson?
Sure.
If they want more.
Yeah, well, you can go to the website, which is Donnie Hutchinson. So it's DONNIE Hutchinson.com. That's the best place to go. I have a video on there, sort of give an overview of how I take people through in the workshops, the process that I use. And but I'm going to start writing some articles with some publications that you guys are very familiar with. So, hopefully we'll get some education out there that way as well. And but I encourage anyone, if they have a question, anyone out there listening, you have a question, you have a concern, on the work-life balance, pick up the phone, give me a call, send me an email. We'll schedule a time to call. I try to, if I'm not busy, I can be talking to one of you guys and one of your members and help out. So,
Donnie, remind us the book again. You wrote a book.
yes, thank you. I have a book. It's called Lead with Balance. It's how to master work-life balance in an imbalanced culture. And you alluded to that with we work and work and work, and we're materialistic, and Wall Street has taught us well. It's all about making money, more and more and more. Yet we have to sometimes step back, and that's where we like, right? Early on in people's careers, in the fire service career, let's step back and say, what are those priorities in life, and how do I align my day-to-day activities with those so that I can have a sustainable career and a sustainable happy family?
Yeah, I would say that as we're closing, trying to get to the younger, newer firefighter. The fire service is going to continue on without. Chicago Fire Department is moving on without Danny. I mean, they're going to move on without me when I leave, and anybody else that's in the fire service when they move through. But so you're not going to be the end all be all to your organization. But if we can get them to focus on just leave it a little bit better than when you got in, and get out on the other side healthy, raise a good family or have a good relationships. If you don't get married and have kids, have good relationships, purposeful relationships in society. And I think all the other stuff kind of just comes together when you have purpose in your life. And no matter if you're really a compassionate person that helps people out a lot, or if you're just somebody in society that occupies part of a neighborhood, and you're giving back to the kids or whatever it is, all of this will go and make you a better person in society. So I appreciate your time, Donnie, and I'm gonna, as soon as we get off here, I'm probably gonna get on Amazon and get your book and start moving through it. So.
Well, thank you very much for having me on. It's an absolute honor, and it's great to get to meet and talk with both of you guys.
Yeah, Rob, you forgot to ask him the discount code. Right, the firefighter discount. Come on, man. You could text him that because he was thinking that he just didn't want to do it on the air. Yeah, Donnie, thanks for being here, and thanks for doing what you're doing. We are in the fire service a unique creature to do what we do. I hope that you're received well and people treat you with respect. And again, honestly, is that I can imagine that when some people, and Rob's gone to a lot more trainings than I have, he really immerses himself into instructing and leadership and so forth, that if I would have been offered a work-life balance class or training 25 years ago, I'm just being honest, not that one. But where I'm at now, man, it needs to be the fabric. And again, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Never had elephant yet, but maybe Rob has, because he's been all over the frickin' country and everywhere. Where do you get the money? You must get paid really well. So I think you do it for the money. Yeah, I'm going there. Yeah, this is a little rant. This is a little Bobby Halton rant, and you don't unmute yourself.
I did unmute myself. See, that's how this is a relationship. This is a good example of a love-hate relationship. He's jealous, and it goes back to priorities. My priority is spending time with my wife, and we love to travel Europe. So that's our priorities. And I've always invited you and Victoria to come along. So we prioritize.
Yeah. And just so you know, the last time I went downtown Chicago, everything did stop because I wasn't there. Everything was in slow motion. Again, hey, everybody, thanks for being with us. Thanks for taking the time. Donnie, thanks for supporting us, because we need support. And we'll see. When do we see? When's our next one? April? Sometime in April. Come on, co-host. You're supposed to know. Anyhow,
Yeah, I don't remember.
be safe out there and be intentional.
Thank you, everyone.
Guys.